When you saw that particularly the judge in the US in San Francisco had given the clear for now, in the US at least, what did you think?
It's a disappointing result for consumers. Once the FTC brought this case, we were really hoping that it was going to be a win on the preliminary injunction. I do think the FTC might continue to fight the case, but this is certainly a loss.
Okay, interesting. Whereas many have felt that actually, even though the FTC lost in this way, they have managed to force the hand of Microsoft to make some changes, and indeed so have UK regulators. Do you think, why don't you, for example, think that that's been enough?
Yes, and there's also a settlement in the European Union where they're going to be giving some licenses for other cloud gaming services to be able to use Call of Duty. So that's great, that's progress, but we would still be concerned about the competitive impacts of the merger. It's not just about Call of Duty, it's also about the next big game. And I'm concerned about independent gamers, independent game studios having the same opportunities to reach customers, and for those gamers to have access to those games. So there are going to be broader anti-competitive impacts that we're concerned about, and I think Call of Duty isn't the only thing that needs to be fixed.
And of course, as you mentioned, deal isn't yet done. FTC could appeal. We also know that the UK, they might have to start from basically scratch, once again coming with different ways in which they could alleviate the previous veto to the deal. What could they do you think, Charlotte, to alleviate some of those concerns that you have?
Well, I think it would be very difficult to address this merger with behavioral remedies with a settlement. I think that's still on the table, but those settlements are often time limited. The settlement in the European Union is for 10 years. Now, a lot can happen in 10 years. There could be innovation and new competitors coming up. But I think about past mergers where we've seen a 10-year settlement agreement, and that 10 years actually ends up going by really fast, and then consumers are left with a more consolidated market. So I think enforcers need to be really careful in making sure that they're only agreeing to a settlement that is really going to solve the problem.
And sort of herein lies, if you look at history, what the FTC is trying to do. They're almost trying to unwind the shift of this particular regulatory authority in the way in which it views deals, in the way in which it views the adverse effects of oligopolies or monopolies or size and scale, because it isn't just all about consumer and prices. It's about more than that, it feels like, for the current guys of the FTC. Are they going about this? Is Lina Khan, to put it bluntly, going about this the right way to take on these big deals, try and take big hits and then be losing them?
Well, of course, it would be better to win. But when you take on those big, hard cases, you're going to have some losses. And I think, we all know that is part of what may end up being a long process. I've been really frustrated that Congress hasn't gotten more involved. Because that is what we really need. These cases are showing that the law isn't where it needs to be. And so we really need Congress to be able to act. There was so much attention and excitement about antitrust in Congress last year, and it didn't come to fruition. They didn't pass any new antitrust legislation except to give more funding to the agencies. We really need stronger antitrust laws in the U.S. to be able to have competitive markets.
Some would say they are stronger, potentially in the UK. What model do you want to see? What changes from a legal perspective?
Yes. So in particular with this case, it seemed like the court got tripped up on the idea of a vertical merger. So it's not a traditional horizontal merger where maybe a game studio is buying a game studio. This was a provider of consoles, subscription services, and cloud gaming buying a game studio. So the court saw it as a vertical merger and talked a lot about how vertical mergers may have pro-competitive benefits and are rarely stopped. But that is not the same as having a presumption in the law in favor of vertical mergers. Vertical mergers can be illegal under antitrust law. But it's clear from this judge and others that needs to be more clear. The FTC is working right now on new merger guidelines, and I think that will be an opportunity for them to educate judges and make this more clear that vertical mergers can be really harmful. But that's also an area that Congress could help with.
Could that not just be politicized, though? Because many would see this as a relatively Democrat-heavy FTC.
Well, certainly there are no Republican commissioners at the FTC right now, but I think, again, that's on the Republicans in Congress who need to move forward with that. But there has been a lot of bipartisan interest, especially last Congress. There were multiple bipartisan bills that passed through the Judiciary Committee with bipartisan votes. So I think Republicans are also interested in antitrust enforcement, and they're recognizing that that's actually how we get a free market functioning correctly.